What if your career didn't start with your resume, but with a life you don't even remember? Could your fears, talents, or even your career path be echoes of a past life? And the bigger question, is this the best career for you? Let's find out. Today on Time We Discuss, I want to welcome back Laura Van Tyne, and it's time we discuss what it's like working as a past life regression specialist. Laura, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Maybe we've done this before. No, I'm kidding.
I love that. I love that. It's really awesome to have you back. I had you here on well, you weren't here, but you kind of were here in episode 143 as paranormal jobs. I highlighted some really fantastic paranormal jobs, and I highlighted yours. But you were here originally the first time, to be redundant, in episode 132 as a professional exorcist. So I want to encourage everyone to go check both those out. Those episodes were amazing. The links are in the description. But we're not talking about that today. We are talking about past life regressions. So, Laura, talk to me about past life regressions. What is it like as a typical day for you? What is it like?
When we have blockages in our life, we have questions that we can't seem to answer. We keep hitting the same brick wall over and over and over. Maybe it's finances, maybe it's relationships, and we can't seem to get past this hurdle. What is blocking us? Could it be a past life bleed through that we need to learn how to heal? But we don't know what we don't know. And so that's the premise of this concept of a past life regression. And I also want to state that we have all had past lives, whether we want to believe it or not. We just don't live a life, die, and go sit on a cloud and play the harp forever. That would be awesome, but it doesn't work that way. So, anyways, so the idea of a past life regression is to help us to become unstuck. And when somebody books a session with me, the first thing we do is I send them a questionnaire. What are the answers? What are you seeking? What is the reason why you're looking for a past life regression? What do you hope to gain? Do you have any health issues? Do you have any other relationship issues? And I'm a gamut of things. So I want somebody to come in with a ton of questions, because the more questions, the merrier. And if anybody's ever worked with me before, I love asking the questions. I must have drove my parents nuts as a kid. So, anyways, but questions. And so what happens then is that we get on Zoom, and usually it's Zoom, it's rarely in person, and we have the conversation around the questions. Because what this is doing is it's setting the scene. It's putting everything together, and then we'll do a regression. And there's several parts to a regression also. And what I really love most about the regressions that I'm blessed to be able to do is the healing components. And there's a lot of healing components that can happen. Physical ailments can disappear during a past life regression. Those are phenomenal. I can never make a promise, but there's no such thing as no such thing.
I'm curious, can you give an example of where that happened? I'd love to hear that.
All right, I had a mom who reached out to me, and she has two children, and her question was, I want to know what I did wrong to deserve to have two children that are handicapped. I'm like, that's heavy, right? I mean, that hurts the heart. And so we went through this, and we have a conversation for maybe 30 to 45 minutes or so before we even get started. But we do this regression, and the regression goes in layers, because the ideal state, we want to get the client into the theta state, a deep sleep where they're still semi-conscious, so we can have this conversation. You're never going to reveal anything you don't want to reveal, though, either. So if you're like having an affair and you don't want me to know, I'm not going to find out. Okay, just saying. But this mom had this question, and we're working, and we're going through the past life, and then we start talking to the mom's higher self. And I asked the question, why does this person have two handicapped children? And the answer was they chose each other. The family unit chose each other because these children needed to have certain experiences so their soul could evolve. Okay. And it's like, wow. And so the boy, he was about 10 years old, and he was having severe grand mal seizures on the daily, and he was losing the ability to walk and talk. And so I asked the question because I love asking questions. I'm working with her higher self. I'm working with these guides. I'm also blessed to be able to see who or what we're speaking with. And I test and vet them every time, because I don't want a shapeshifter or trickster in there. And I asked the question, does this boy still need these experiences, or can these seizures stop? Literally, there's this galactic council, for lack of a better word, having a little huddle, and they come back and they're like, no, he doesn't need these experiences anymore. He stopped having them. And this is a healing by proxy, right?
Wow, it almost reminds me of similar but different. I forget the woman's name. She was a holistic health practitioner, and I want to say that her mother had cancer, and she went down this road of holistic health treatments, and the cancer just disappeared, just gone. No treatment, just gone. So that was really amazing and similar but different. This your story that's just
Yeah.
incredible.
I've had a lot of these types of experiences where the healing is profound. And, I had another guy who was a continual drug addict. And he's 40 years old. He finally gets clean and he hires me to do a regression to find out why he was a drug addict in the first place. And this is a little bit of a darker story because he starts out with saying, "Oh, I was a very, very bad man." I'm like, "Oh, this is not going to be fun." Um, but let's go with it. Long story short, in his most recent past life, he was a drug dealer in Chicago, in the inner cities of Chicago, um, during the era of Al Capone. So what his soul needed was he had to sit on the other side of that coin. In that lifetime, he was a drug dealer and he was dealing specifically to 10 to 14-year-old African American boys. That was his target. In this lifetime, a 14-year-old African American classmate introduced him to drugs. You see the situation there. So it was just like, wow. So he got the answers he was seeking, but this also is a big lesson in karma and balance. We don't all live these perfect lives. And when we can understand why we're experiencing the experiences we have, it can really open up a whole new doorway, a pathway to who we get to become because we're no longer tethered to the unknown.
How often does that happen where you see that karmic relationship between what a person is experiencing now versus what they experienced in the past? How often does that happen?
Not as common as I would think. That was very unusual. Usually, what happens is we find out why somebody has a difficult relationship with maybe a sibling or a parent. We find out why there is constant, like maybe money shortages or financial shortages. And when you can clear that path, the subconscious now is been realigned with you and says, "Oh, yes, okay, I can handle money. I can do these things. I want these things," versus shutting it down. So it helps the soul become in alignment with all of these facets. So our conscious self is this body here. We see, talk here, we're having this conversation. Our subconscious self is that rudimentary part of us that the doctors say reminds us to breathe and keeps our heart beating. But our subconscious self does so much more. Our subconscious self is also the recorder for our soul's history. And that gets put into what was called the Akashic records, this place where our soul's records go to be stored. And then that's what the subconscious does. And then our higher self is outside of us, but around us. And this aspect of us has all the wisdom if we choose to listen to it, right? So during these past life regressions, I'm accessing the person's subconscious and higher self, but we're working through the conscious body, which is now technically asleep. Some people will feel like they're awake, and that's okay because the information still comes.
Do you ever encounter this where someone they want to do the regression, but for some reason they can't get into that state, that something is holding them back? Almost like if someone's going into to see a hypnotherapist or something, where they're trying to, but they just can't get into that right state. How often does that happen? Is that an issue? What's that like?
That can happen where people just can't relax enough. And so if somebody can't relax enough, there might be a trauma that they've experienced somewhere in their soul's journey where they can't, kind of let go. So there's workarounds and there's key phrases and key elements I look for to see if it's the conscious self popping in because the ego self really wants to take control of these situations, right? Or is it, the other aspects of us? So there's key phrases I look for to see if this is the conscious self, butting into a conversation it shouldn't be. Yeah. But it can happen. It's not that common, I don't think. I've had it a couple of times. What I do get is people are going through the regression, but yet they're consciously aware, and that is normal, especially because we're starting to evolve our consciousness throughout the planet, our consciousness levels. But then what happens is they'll be surprised later on when they go back to listen to the session, like, oh, I forgot about this. Oh, I forgot about that.
So sticking with this idea of hypnosis, because it sounds like it's kind of a hypnotic trance almost, if you want to call it that. Talk to me about the education required to do what you're doing. I suspect no one's getting a 4-year degree in past life regressions, but talk to me about that. What kind of training is there? Do you have to find a mentor? How do you start to do what you're doing?
So there's several different types of past life regression institutions or learning centers out there. BHHQ, excuse me, QHHT. There's a few of them out there. I've studied several because I don't prescribe to one size fits all. So I've studied several aspects of this. I study also how the subconscious self works, how the higher self work. How these entities interfere with us. So I'm coming at it from a little bit of a different viewpoint because I can start to see through that person's eyes what's going to happen, but I don't want to ever ask a leading question. So if there is something that might be scary coming down that client's way in this past life regression, we can soften and mitigate it so they're looking at it as if they're watching a movie. So it takes the emotion out of it and they can just kind of go through that and just come out the other side. It's like, oh, yeah, okay, that was no big deal.
Talk to me about the trends in this particular field. Are you seeing that there's more interest in this? It's been steady. How long have you been doing this? Talk to me about that part of it.
I've been doing this for about 8 years. What was happening is that I would have clients and could only get them to a certain point, and I kept hearing from my guides, you need to go into past life. And I could do many past life regressions, but I started studying it formally and judiciously because with that, never stop learning, never assume you know, just know that. But also, are past life regressions becoming more commonplace? And that, yes, they are. It's more of a common phrase. 7, 8, 10 years ago, it was kind of a back alley kind of a concept for most people. And now it's shifted, but there's a lot of practitioners out there. So, anybody listening to this, you need to do a deep dive on this practitioner that you would like to use. Okay. Because this is about your soul health. If you have a plumbing issue, if you need an attorney, if you're looking for childcare, you do the research, right? This is no different. You do not want to find somebody who is a charlatan in this manner. You want to see, if they have a website, does it vibe with you? Does it ring true for you? Ask for, maybe some insights from that practitioner. One of the most common things I'll tell people when you're working with somebody on a spiritual level, ask them, how do they clear themselves between clients? The same thing with the past life regression. How do you know you're fully detached? How do I know my client is fully detached? So there's processes. So just ask the questions. Your soul's worth it. This is about your soul health.
That's really, really good information. Are there any, I'll say groups for lack of better words, groups out there that have access to people that are properly vetted, where it's like, oh, this is a good person, that's a good person. Does anything like that exist? Any resource like that?
Not to my knowledge. So you've got, let's say the QHHT people will have like this long list of people who've passed their courses. I don't know if they're any good. And this is something that's worth asking around also. I mean, it's no, now, we're out of the closet with this stuff in a lot of ways, right? With the spiritual aspects of things. And there's nothing wrong. Oh, I'm thinking about getting a past life regression. Have you ever heard of it or this or that with your, who you feel comfortable with? But yeah, that's one way to go about it.
Diving a little deeper with education. I remember from before, you were a teacher, middle school, I think, right?
Middle school, math and Spanish. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So are there any specific fields of study that would lend themselves well to doing this? Would psychology help? Would I don't know. Insert major
Psychology,
here.
yes, psychology helps. I do feel that my being a former public school teacher really helps because I've learned how to listen and I learned how to ask questions without leading the witness. That is key. So a lot of times, when we can ask questions without leading the witness, it means my ego is in check. The regression is not about me or what I think you should be experiencing. It's about you. And so asking the right question. So I think my journey as a teacher has served me well in these new careers. I mean, it's not anything I would have ever. I should be retired with a pension, let's face it, but now I'm doing these things. Um, but it serves well because the ability to listen, the ability to understand psychology, the ability to be very intuitive. When I'm doing a past life regression, I've got the person on Zoom and I ask to see like their face or the side of their face. So they're usually lying down and they're on Zoom because I want to see if there's any tensions in the face or what is happening. Because that means that either, we need to help them work through that on a more subtle yet deeper level. It's a little bit of an oxymoron, but not, because that is really key for their health and well-being also.
Talk to me about Zoom versus conducting these in person. Are there any challenges? I mean, there's obviously going to be some challenges working with technology, but are there any major challenges deciding to work with someone remotely versus in person? What is that like?
Really good question. I do them in person, but I'm limited by time and space, right? And so when somebody is doing this on Zoom, and 7 or 8 years ago, this was a big deal to do them on Zoom because things would drop off, right? And so I used to have the requirement that if you're going to do this on Zoom, I need the phone number of somebody who is in your home or space with you. So that if something were to happen, I can call them and they can reconnect the internet. That's not the case as much anymore, but if there's any type of like low connection point or something, we need to reschedule that because I don't want to have to be cut off and you're still there in that state, right? Yeah.
With the nature of this, how often do you have repeat clients? Because with any good business, you want to have repeat clients.
Yeah.
What is that like? Do you eventually get to a point where it's you've been with a person so many times, you've done so many regressions, and that's all you can offer? How does that factor in?
Okay, excellent question because what you don't want is you don't want to be addicted to the information coming in. Okay, that's the key. So I've worked with people like 3 or 4 times. And each time there's something else that unfolds. But after somebody does a past life regression, I don't want to see them for at least a month or two. It's not because I don't love them, but they have to integrate and process that information. And then, I'm working with a woman who's going through some career changes and some other things. And so she's asking, her regressions are actually current life possible opportunities through a past life regression. It sounds a little bit complicated, but sometimes a past life regression can actually be aspects of our current life that need healing, that need to be opened up.
You said something that made me think of this. It's a little off the wall, but very
Okay.
appropriate, I think. Um, Sometimes you hear about people doing tarot card readings or oracle card readings at parties. That's kind of like a fun thing. Do you ever do something like that as like mini regressions maybe at like a bachelor party, bachelorette party, a just because party? Do you Does anything like that ever happen? Is that an opportunity to
I have to this day, I have never touched a tarot card. Really good question again. Um, Parlor tricks and such, that's not necessarily my jam, right? But that's okay. The work I do tends to be a little bit more serious in nature, a little bit more in depth, I should say. And so I'm not, and I'm also of the mindset that, especially with people who are out there who are psychic, who walk, stranger walks up to you and says, "Oh, I see your dead grandma there," blah, 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 blah. I don't know that person's frame of mind. is this their belief structure? Are they fragile? So I kind of like keep to myself, but if somebody asks me questions or whatever, absolutely. Yeah.
One of the things I'd like to ask, and I think I know at least one of the things that you could say with this, but one of the things I'd like to ask, what are some of the unexpected perks that come along with having this job?
I get to see and have contact with amazing things. I did a past life regression with this woman because I can see through their eyes also because it's a safety mechanism, is how I do it. We got to go to heaven. That was cool. I
Talk to me
mean,
about that. Talk to me about that.
oh my gosh. So she's going through this past life and she dies, and then she's escorted up to heaven. And everything was like a pure crystalline energy, for lack of a better word. I wish I could like make the movies so people could see it. Um, the water, which was not water, was just flowing. It was just pure energy. It was brilliant. It was amazing. And they took her home to the heavens. That was amazing. That was definitely unexpected.
I love that. Okay. One of the things I want to try to start exploring with different people I talk to are, not just the job, which is usually what I talk about, but career opportunities. So, what are some ways that you can take what you're doing now? Let's say you get tired of doing this and you want to springboard it into doing something else, or you want to take another job and springboard into this. What are some, I guess, tangentially related jobs that you could probably use your existing one to go into or come out of, if that makes sense?
With past life regressions, what we're dealing with is the psychology of humanity. So, any of those fields that are related to the psychology, humanity, spiritual types of healings, and things like that, I think it would catapult in those elements, those aspects, the best.
Talk to me about how busy you are with this part of your with this
With
part of
what
your
I do?
career.
With what I do, yeah. Past life regressions probably take about 25% of my client load each week. I am pretty much Monday through Thursday, all day, every day. This is what I do for a living. And a past life regression will last between 3 and 5 hours, also. Actually, 3 hours is short. I'd say 4 to 5 hours.
That's in one chunk.
One chunk, yes. Because I want to be thorough. I don't want to miss anything. We take our time. So you're looking at half a day.
So here's a silly question. Does the person ever get hungry? Do they need to get up and use the restroom?
The
How does
restroom is
that?
the thing. The restroom is the thing. And so every now and then somebody has to use the restroom. And so I will tell them, I use a certain induction voice that you will go use the restroom. When you come back, you will start where you left off, and it's pretty seamless.
Wow, I never would have guessed it would have been
Yeah.
that. Wow, that's cool. Okay.
I try to think of all the things.
Laura, like so many other times, I feel like we just scratched the surface on this. But unfortunately, I'm running out of time. Before I hand the floor over to you, I want to take a second and thank Susie Schaefer for recommending you. Susie was in episode 152 and 161 as an owner of an independent publishing company and an Oracle card reader. Everyone, please go check out those episodes. The links are in the description. Laura, just like last time, this is the part of the show where I like to offer my guests the opportunity to talk about a project they're working on, a cause they believe in, or about their business. So if there's something specific you'd like to discuss, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. We were just talking, I went through a huge rebrand. So my website is now lauravantyne.com. On there, I write weekly blogs. I've got 2 or 3 years of weekly blogs. So if you're looking for some information, you just type it in the search and it'll auto-populate of those blogs along those themes. There's services there. The goal is to help people understand what is happening. It's about soul health, soul wellness. We talk about our health all the time, right? But we don't talk about our soul health. So what does it take to have a healthy soul? And that's the whole goal of what I do and the work I do and the website. And there's a lot of information on it that I think most people could benefit from.
That is awesome, Laura. I'll make sure I'll get those links from you. I'll put them in the show notes. They'll be in the description. They'll be
Okay.
all over the place. So when people are trying to find you, they can easily do that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. It's been such a great time understanding what it's like doing past life regressions.
Thank you.
Let's do a quick recap on our conversation with Laura. She said 25% of her work week includes doing past life regressions with other people. So if this is something you want to do professionally, you might have to augment this with something else for the remainder of your week, unless you're looking to do this just part-time. Now, she talked briefly about barriers to entry, not a whole lot. She said working with psychology could help, understanding people, understanding how to listen is key. So if you're a person that doesn't like to listen or find it difficult to listen, this might not be for you. She also talked about remote opportunities. This is really cool. So she does this in person, but also remote. So if you have a strong desire to work remotely, this could be a really, really great opportunity for you. One of the other things that Laura talked about was how she has seen like the stigma kind of go away over the past 8 years and how growth has continued over the past 8 years. So that's something to keep in mind too, that this doesn't seem to be something that is going away anytime soon. It might be kind of hard to break into because it is kind of a fringe idea here, but it definitely is something worth considering. So that's what it's like conducting past life regressions professionally. Thank you again to Laura for sharing her time with us as we continue to explore the best careers.